Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon Vera. I'm the Business Development Manager for the VNH. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about grief through the holidays. Joining us, we have three extraordinary people to help us through this holiday season. First up, we have Reverend Gary Shapiro. He is an interfaith, interspiritual minister serving as a spiritual counselor, hospice chaplain, and officiant for life celebrations and transitions, such as weddings and funerals. Since March 2017, Reverend Gary has worked as a spiritual care counselor with the VNH. Reverend Gary attended One Spirit Interfaith Seminary in New York and is ordained as an interfaith minister since 2011. He is a member and attendee of the Unitarian Universalist Church in Heartland, Four Corners, Vermont, and lives in a homestead in West Windsor. For more information on Reverend Gary's ministry and peacebuilding work, please visit www.reverendgaryshapiro.com. Gary, the holidays can be so difficult for people. What do you say to people struggling with loss during these holidays?
Hello. Well, I want to start by saying that the grief we feel when we lose a loved one or anything we are deeply connected to has many layers and aspects to it, many forms and nuances. But for me, the simplest and clearest way to understand, deal, and eventually find some healing around grief is to see it as a journey from presence and connection with someone to absence and disconnection, and eventually back to presence and connection. This journey begins with a bond, a sharing, an intertwining, which we like to see as loving and joyous, but can also be conflictual and difficult, and everything in between. Maybe we didn't even like the person in some ways, but regardless, there is a sense of the person present and connected to us, affecting our minds, hearts, and souls. When that person dies, we often feel a sense of loss. They are gone. There may be pain and longing in our heart, sometimes described as a hole in our heart, where our loved one once resided. The feelings may be overwhelming: pain, sadness, terror about being alone, regret, guilt, so many feelings. Or we may be numb, not feeling much of anything, not wanting to do much of anything. We may experience any or all of these things and more, but the connecting thread for all of it is that feeling of loss, absence, separation. And the road to healing grief is about feeling the person present again and feeling the connection with him or her once more. That's no simple task, but many have traveled that road and found that they acquired a deeper love, compassion, joy, and inner strength than they ever could have imagined. I invite you to consider there is great hope and peace in that possibility. Grief is probably the experience most common to all human beings. If you live long enough, at least to adulthood, you will lose someone that was a part of your life. That is the part of the price we pay for being human and mortal in this world. So grief can be very painful and overwhelming at any time, but we can especially feel captured by its power during times of celebration, like the holidays coming up. I think that has to do with the fact that, unlike most of the year when we're all so busy living our lives, holidays are a time when the focus is on being together with our loved ones. Although, of course, different people view holidays differently. But Christmas and Thanksgiving just passed are traditionally a time to be with family, with loved ones. So naturally, we really feel the loss and separation when the holiday comes and our loved ones are not there. We think of them, of the past holidays enjoyed together, of beautiful memories, traditions, rituals, but all that can become daggers of pain when we think that all that is gone. That is especially true when it's the first holiday since our loved ones passed. It can be very painful, and most humans normally want to avoid feeling any pain. That avoidance can even take the form of deciding not to think of the memories, not to get into the traditions, not talk about our loved ones who have passed. not even celebrate the holidays, so we don't have to feel that sadness and loss or a broken heart. But what if, instead of avoiding the pain, we allowed it to be there as a way to feel the love that is also there? What if, instead of avoiding the memories and traditions we associate with our loved ones, we put extra effort into remembering and sharing those memories and traditions as a way to feel their presence and feel our connection to them even more strongly? While there is no one path through grief that works for everyone, I invite you to consider the wisdom of that saying that the way to get through it is to go through it. I invite you to consider that when the heart breaks, it can break open and release love more powerful and long lasting than we can even imagine. In that way, the holidays can be an especially valuable opportunity to move from absence and disconnection to renewed presence and reconnection. So, bring your departed loved ones to the holidays and share the memories of them, memories that make you laugh or cry or be amazed or be relieved. And so, very important is that in the memories are the stuff of gratitude for all that we have experienced and lived with that person. Yes, instead of focusing on how the memories are past and gone, see them as precious jewels that shine bright when we put out of view. When put out of view. So much to be grateful for with those who have graced our lives. Those memories are what we get to keep. Those memories are what doesn't ever die. They bring our loved ones back present with us, connected with us again. Let your loved ones be with you during the holidays. Yes, let your loved ones be front and center as you go through the holiday rituals and celebration. Have your loved ones with you as you go shopping for gifts, including shopping online. Have your loved ones right there as you're cooking the turkey, watching the football games, eating pumpkin pie, decorating the Christmas tree, playing with the grandchildren, drinking your eggnog, making gingerbread houses, giving gifts. Well, have some gifts for your loved one as well. Make your favorite food and drink and even serve it to them. Make a place for them at the table. Have their favorite recliner out and leave it open for your loved one to sit in. Sing songs that were favorites of your loved one. Whatever traditions you have, make your loved one a part of it and just talk with your loved one. Who knows? They might very well be listening and really enjoying being a part of the festivities. Now, I don't mean to suggest that everything will be light and fun and joyous by doing all of this. But again, please consider that to get through the pain may require going through it to whatever extent we can. So expect there to be sadness and tears during the holidays. Expect that perhaps there will be regrets, agonizing questions, memories that aren't so great. But the good news is that we don't have to go through it alone. That's the beauty of the holidays and the opportunity of being with others, if we can be, that we can share our sadness with others. We don't have to grieve alone. So let the sadness be there and invite your family and friends to let it be there for them. Or if it isn't, it still is an opportunity for them to give you support. It is an opportunity for you and those closest to you to lean on each other and embrace each other more fully. Not everyone will want to, even those you are closest to. Not everyone is inclined to do it. But perhaps your being willing to be there with your grief will give them permission and encouragement to do the same. The journey of grief, the journey from presence and connection to absence and disconnection, and then back to presence and connection, that journey can be long and unpredictable. But the holidays are a great opportunity to feel that presence and connection again, to let our broken hearts really break wide open and deepen love as never before. Thank you.
So much for your thoughts, Gary. So many great ideas to make this time of year easier for people. Up next, we have Lava Mueller. Lava Mueller is an ordained minister at the United Church of Christ. She completed her chaplaincy training at Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center, and she serves at the VNH as a hospice chaplain. Much of Lava's work as a hospice chaplain focuses on bereavement care with the families of her deceased patients. Lava recognizes the importance of respecting and welcoming grief, even though grief can be excruciatingly painful. She often refers to grief as the fiercest form of love. Lava, while a typical holiday season can be trying for people, COVID has added an additional layer of stress. Help us through this holiday season,
Indeed,
please.
this is a really hard time. And when I visit my patients, losing a loved one is so painful. And there's beauty involved and so much love. And at the time of death can be really actually quite profoundly good, beautiful. But the grief is so intense. And these days when I make my visits to the patients, I have to say to them, it's the holidays, and that just adds a whole other layer to the grief. You're not going to have your loved one with you. And then I look at them and go, oh yeah, and COVID. COVID is so huge, and we are living in it right now. We have this new normal that we barely even realize is new because we're just in it, and it's hard to. I think we're not really going to realize the intensity of what we're going through right now until we're done with it. And at that time, we're going to look back and go, oh my God, how did we get through this? So I want to tell you all something, which is that in March of this year, and this is November now, December, I lost my mom. She was 90 years old. She had a stroke. She was living in a nursing home, and she died 2 days after her stroke. And this was in March, and it was right at the beginning of this pandemic. And my sister and brother and I, my father's been gone for a while. My sister and brother and I were not able to be with her. We weren't allowed at the time. We weren't allowed in the hospital. And then when she was finally, they realized she was dying, they said, oh, you can come now, but it was too late. We were too far away, and it happened too quickly, and we couldn't get there. So my mother died, excuse me, I have a cough. It's not COVID. My mother died, I'm not going to say alone, because I know that the people in the hospital were there with her, and I know they did a fabulous job, but she didn't have any loved ones with her. So that is complicating my grief. And I think that anybody right now who has lost someone during this year, your grief is complicated by COVID. You can't have the funeral you wanted to have. You can't visit with people the way you want. You can't grieve with people the way you should be able to do. I obviously go to a church, and our church hasn't been meeting in person. And I love the cards that I got from everyone, but I should be getting hugs from them. And I'm talking about my own grief. I know so many people who've lost people during this time too, and I can't hug them either. So there's so much complication. So I'm going to tell another story. The other day I was with my family. So my situation is I live with my husband and our kids, excuse me. And our children are, our son is 21 and our daughter's about to turn 23 in a few days. And, normally they would be out in the world, right? That's what young people do at that age. They had lives, they were out in the world, but they came home. It's a safe thing to do. So we're all living together, just the four of us. We had Thanksgiving, and it was just the four of us, and it was lovely, but we usually have a giant full table. And after Thanksgiving, I found myself really blue, and I started thinking about Christmas. And I said to my family, you guys, you never really give me anything good for Christmas, which is so funny because it's not true. And I was just kind of going off on this thing of like, I give all these things and I don't really get anything. And they were looking at me kind of like, what? And I really went off for a while, and they gave me some space. And finally I out of my mouth was like, I don't have my mom, and I'm not going to have her at Christmas. And I just started crying, and they were so good to me. And they just helped me realize that it nothing makes sense when you're grieving. Things don't go in any particular order. There used to be this idea that there was these stages of grief. And while maybe some of those stages might be a thing we go through, they don't go in order. We don't do all of them. And my mom died so many months ago, and I'm still kind of coming up with wackadoodle things like my family doesn't give me anything for Christmas. So I'm just telling that story to say that if you're grieving right now and it's the holidays and it's COVID, you're probably maybe not going to make sense sometimes. You might say things that are just kind of outrageous. And what you need to do is go easy on yourself and be able to laugh about it, because it can be funny, the way that we aren't able to think. Obviously, it's painful and sad, but speaking of funny, we just have to laugh sometimes. And fortunately, in a few minutes, Heidi's going to tell us some ideas of how we can take care of ourselves. But for what I want to do is I just want to lift up the intensity of this time, the sadness of having a holiday and not having your loved one call you or be with you. My mom always calls me on my birthday, which was recently. And of course she didn't. And the funny thing is that my brother didn't either. And I realized, oh, he only called me on my birthday because she would call him and tell him it was my birthday. And she didn't. And so he didn't, which was fine. But little things like that happen, and especially around the holidays, we realize it. So I'm just kind of thinking right now that there's no way we can understand the depth of the complications of the holidays and COVID when you're grieving. We can't understand it. It's too much right now. And maybe in the future, we will. But right now, what we need to do is hold it. We have a hole in our heart. That's some language from what Gary shared. Beautiful language, Gary. A hole in our heart when we grieve. And another thing Gary said is we just have to go through it. So just know that I know that I feel blessed and held by God's love, by the spirit of love. I feel like I'm not alone because I have people who love me. But mostly during COVID, nothing can separate me from God's love. Nothing. I don't have to wear a mask when I'm in the presence of God. I'm always in the presence of God, and I can always turn to God. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for what I have, and I'm grieving, and it is complicated. And if you are grieving and you feel a little confused about it or a lot confused, just know this is a hard time to be grieving. Amen.
Thank you, Lava. This new normal has been a transition for all of us, and I appreciate your touching personal story about your mom. Up next, we have Heidi Smith. After working for 20 years as a registered nurse, Heidi Smith turned her calling for helping people from nursing to ministry and hospice chaplaincy. She was ordained as an interfaith minister in 2008 from the New Seminary in New York and has served in pastoral ministry, and for the last 8 years has been the spiritual care counselor for the VNH. While her primary focus is the sacred work of supporting people at the end of life and in the grieving process, she also is a published author of mythic fantasy fiction. She loves nature, gardening, reading, and in pre-COVID days, traveling. Heidi, there's been so much stress and sadness this year. Please talk to us about the joy of the season.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you, Lava and Gary, for your really important thoughts. And it's true. I mean, this year we have a double whammy. If we have lost someone to death, we are also dealing with COVID, and COVID has really, as Lava said, complicated even the process of being with someone who has died, and now it's complicating the process of grief. But I run a grief support group every week, and we've been talking a lot these last few weeks, actually, in preparation for Thanksgiving and Christmas, about really finding a way to honor our loved ones, to find a way of celebrating our holidays and finding the joy in the holidays, even if our heart is broken, even with that big hole that Gary spoke about. It's really important that we find a way to celebrate. And why is that? Well, I think the reason is because we are human beings that thrive on community and family. And those two things, even if the definitions of community and family are a little bit different from person to person, we need the connection. We also are people that really uh, honor and live our lives and make memories and find meaning in the changing, if you will, wheel of the year. Seasonal changes, we celebrate every season some uh, event that has happened. So those are the things that make meaning in our life. So when you're someone who's lost a loved one, or you're grieving the fact that you can't be with your loved ones at this time of year, it hurts. So how can we find the joy? And where is that joy? And that really is at the core of what I wanted to speak about today, is where is the joy in holidays when we can't be with the ones we love because they've passed or because of COVID? And I think the answer might be found in a story that we're all familiar with, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And at least that's what came to my mind as I was thinking about this. So you know the story, but I'm going to sort of tell you an abbreviated version of it. And the story goes like this. The Grinch hated Christmas. He absolutely hated Christmas. He hated everything about Christmas. He hated the presents, the food. He mostly hated the singing. And no one knew why he hated those things. You know, maybe it was the fact that his shoes were too tight. Maybe it was the fact that his heart was too small. Or maybe he was grieving. Maybe there was something that happened to him during Christmas that made him hate Christmas. And so he decided that if he wasn't going to have Christmas or didn't want to hear about Christmas, then nobody else was going to either. And so he created this terrible, awful, diabolical plan to steal Christmas from all the Whos who lived in Whoville. He carried out his plan pretty well. He rode down like Santa Claus would, only he was no real Santa Claus. He rode down into Whoville and he went to every single house and he took their gifts and he took their trees. He took every ornament, every evidence of Christmas there, took all the food, took all the lights. He didn't even leave a crumb big enough for a single mouse. He gathered all of those things and took them back up to his cave. But just as he was about to go in, and just as about a new day was dawning, Christmas Day, he looked back down at Whoville and saw an amazing thing and heard an amazing thing. He saw all of those Whos gathering around the center of their village, and they started singing. They started singing the same song they had always sung that drove him absolutely crazy and made him want to cancel Christmas. And then he said to himself, oh my gosh, even though I did this, Christmas still came. It still came. And he didn't know why. It came without ribbons. It came without any wrapping. It came without presents. It came without food. It came without everything. And he thought about this and he puzzled it through in his mind and tried to figure out how this could be. And then the Grinch thought of something that he hadn't thought of before. He thought, maybe Christmas isn't about the presents or the tree or the decorations or the food. Maybe it's not about any of those things. Maybe it's about something different. And as he started thinking about those things, he felt his heart grow. He felt love enter his heart. He felt, well, I don't know if he would have called it love, but he certainly felt something entering his heart. And pretty soon it was more than he could even contain within himself. The thing was, what he heard and what he saw from the Whos in Whoville when everything was taken away from them and there was no reason to celebrate, made him realize that the reason they celebrated was because they had each other, because they have love within their hearts. And it wasn't about any of those things that he took away. It was about the connection. It was about the meaning of the season and the love that they had for each other. And so the Grinch went down into the village, took all the gifts back, took the trees back, set everything back up. The feast was laid out on the table, and the Grinch carved the roast beef. The reason I share that story is because we are really in that same situation. It is a very difficult year to celebrate any holiday, but because we are not celebrating for specific gifts, we're not celebrating for who is actually sitting at that table. We might have to celebrate with someone via the computer, which I did at Thanksgiving, and it was beautiful. We might not have that person there at all, but the love that bound us remains. So whether we're separated by death or whether we're separated because of COVID, the love we feel for those who are not with us at this holiday is still there. And we have to honor that. We have to celebrate that. It might be a different kind of celebration. It might be a little bit bittersweet, but it still needs to happen so that we can honor that loved one. Gary said a lot of things that were important, like taking care of yourself and honoring that you're tired. Lava spoke of it as well. Acknowledge what you're feeling. It's not that you want to ignore it, but dig down deep and find that thing, that feeling, that connection with the person who's not there that allows you to honor them through the celebration. I really hope everybody has a good holiday season. I know it's not going to be easy. It's not easy for any of us. But we, as they say, it's becoming perhaps a little bit cliche, but it's a cliche I like. We are in this together, and we can find meaning and community and joy in celebrating Christmas this year, or Hanukkah, or whatever season or holiday that you celebrate. Give it your best. Take care of yourself, take care of one another, and just have a good holiday. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Such incredible words, and I love that story. So thank you so much for bringing all of your positivity to us today. I really want to thank Gary, Lava, and Heidi one more time. Like I said, extraordinary people who really have brought a lot of peace and joy to many people in the Upper Valley. And we're very lucky to have them with us today. So thank you all again so much for all that you do. Please let me know if there's anything that we at the VNH can do for you in the community to help. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.